Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story this hour. It is D-Day in France. The stage is set for the final round of voting. Ballots have opened across the nation. And French people have started casting their votes. Now, this is being seen as one of the most polarizing elections in the country's history. Officially, the winner will only be decided tomorrow, which is the 25th of April. The choice is between two leaders with starkly different ideologies. Incumbent President and Centrist leader Emmanuel Macron, and on the other hand, far-right leader Marine Le Pen. The presidential debate was proof that they differ in almost everything. Macron is looking to secure a second consecutive term, something that has not happened in the last 2 decades. Under Macron, France has seen many predictable and unpredictable crises: yellow vest protests, COVID-19 pandemic, and the ongoing war in Europe. So it will be interesting to see if the French people put their trust in Macron again. This is Le Pen's third and last try for the presidency. For her, the victory is important because her political future depends on it. Her position as the chief of the National Rally Party might be at risk. French citizens living abroad are queuing up to vote for the elections at home. In Canada's Montreal City, expats believe that French election is bound to have international impact, especially in the European Union.
C'était important pour moi de venir ici aujourd'hui parce que ça fait longtemps que j'habite à Montréal, ça fait 11 ans maintenant. J'ai aussi beaucoup d'amis et beaucoup de familles qui sont encore en France et qui vivent le quotidien de la politique française, qui ont un impact. Puis j'ai aussi 2 enfants qui peut-être vont aller en France un jour pour vivre, ou même moi-même. Donc la politique française a un impact international.
The most recent opinion polls show a Macron with a solid and slightly growing lead, but experts say that a surprise Le Pen victory cannot entirely be ruled out. This is because in France today, high numbers of voters are yet to decide who they will vote for, and many are unsure if they will vote at all. Le Pen has been trying to woo the left base. Days ahead of today's voting, she was seen toning down some of her far-right policies. Meanwhile, just near the Eiffel Tower, workers were seen building a stage for Emmanuel Macron's speech. He is scheduled to address his supporters today. Now we are being joined by WION correspondent Rosie Birchard from Paris for more on this. Hello to you, Rosie. Can you begin by telling us what is the mood like right now in Paris? President Macron also said to address his supporters. What can you tell us?
Well, the sun is shining here in Paris and polls have been open for a few hours. I'm here at one polling station in the centre of the city, and voters are arriving, coming and going and lining up, filling ballot boxes full of votes that will decide who gets the keys to the Elysee Palace and becomes the next president of France. Will it be the incumbent centrist Emmanuel Macron or his far-right challenger Marine Le Pen? One of the big questions here is around turnout. Now, while you see people arriving to vote behind me, and some voters I've spoken to say it feels important to them to exercise that right to vote, that is not the case for all eligible French voters. Some will choose not to vote for practical reasons. It's the middle of the school holidays here, for example, and others for political reasons, either because they're dissatisfied with both of the candidates or simply that they want to show that they have a dissatisfaction with the presidential and electoral and political system as a whole.
Right, and Rosie, the trends tell us that Macron is still leading the opinion polls. However, there is uncertainty, as you've mentioned, due to the large number of undecided voters and, of course, Jean-Luc Mélenchon's voter base. Is there any clarity on that?
There is no clarity on that whatsoever. When campaigning closed on Friday, the polls did suggest Emmanuel Macron had a lead of between 10 and 12 points, but of course it is still everything to play for. You mentioned Jean-Luc Mélenchon. He was the leftist candidate that came third in the first round of the presidential elections and gaining around 1 in 5 votes. That is why both candidates, Marine Le Pen and Emmanuel Macron, have been courting the left vote for the last 2 weeks of their campaigning, trying to get some of those votes that went to Mélenchon back to the ballot boxes and to their side of the campaign. Now, while Jean-Luc Mélenchon told his supporters not to give a single vote to Marine Le Pen, he did not formally or explicitly endorse Emmanuel Macron, and polls suggest that around 2/3 of his supporters might either spoil their ballots or simply not show up to vote. And that is certainly one big question mark and something no doubt of a concern to both of those candidates. That's why they closed that campaigning on Friday with a plea from both sides to come and vote and show up and exercise that right, regardless of where the vote goes.
Right, and Rosie, we have seen Le Pen soften her stance on some of her staunch far-right policies. Do you think that she has been able to effectively communicate her policies to the people of France?
Well, while Emmanuel Macron does appear to have a lead in the polls, it is still a much tighter race than in 2017 when he secured a really landslide victory over that familiar rival Marine Le Pen. This time round, she has managed to, according to the polls, at least increase her support. Now, while you mentioned a toughening of stances, there also has been a perceived softening of her stances, not least because another far-right candidate who was in the first round of the presidential elections, Eric Zemmour, appeared to perhaps show Le Pen as a candidate more towards the centre, with his policies and views being even more radical still. So Le Pen has come up with some policies that Emmanuel Macron has labelled as racist. For example, Le Pen is proposing to ban Muslim women from wearing headscarves. She's planning a mass referendum, for example, on immigration, and a real clampdown on immigration as a whole. Those are some of her flagship policies, which of course have attracted support. She's also been talking to voters that might feel left behind, particularly given the tough cost of living crisis that France is going through, and many people are feeling in their pockets here. That is something which she accuses incumbent Emmanuel Macron of not being able to manage.
Rosie, thank you very much for joining us with all the latest on those French elections. And now also joining us live on this broadcast for more details on this is Lisa Louis, who is a Paris-based freelance journalist, joining us live. Will you take us through the latest ground polling situation so far, Lisa, with the reports of voter apathy? Do you expect the voter turnout to be lower than the previous elections?
That's certainly a possibility. Some analysts have been saying that it could reach actually record highs. Now, in French history, in the history of the Fifth Republic since the 1950s, the highest abstention rate was 31. That could be topped this time around because many people feel, as Rosie just mentioned, that none of the two candidates appeal to them. Many left-wing voters think that a left-wing candidate should have made it into the second round, and they're not willing to vote for Emmanuel Macron, the current president, because they feel that he has put in place too many market-orientated reforms, although he has also carried out some left-wing reforms, and during the COVID pandemic, for example, spent billions of euros to keep the economy afloat here.
Right. Now, do you think that Emmanuel Macron will be able to cinch a second term at the Elysée?
Well, polls are saying that. The only way for him to not win is really, as Rosie mentioned, first of all, that many people stay at home because they think it's a done deal. And also, more than 10% of the voters who have said that they would turn out to vote, they haven't made up their mind just yet. So if all this comes together, then there could be a slim possibility that he does not win the elections. But, mind you, polls in France, as opposed to polls in the UK or the US, have traditionally, historically, always been right when it comes to the presidential elections. And the polls are showing right now that Emmanuel Macron is in the lead.
Right, and what will a loss mean for far-right candidate Marine Le Pen?
Well, Marine Le Pen, after the last presidential election 5 years ago, everybody thought that she would have to go, that there was no way she could come back. Now, she did, though, and even if she lost this election, that would certainly not destroy her. It looks like the far right, or at least its ideas, are on the rise. And that's also down to the fact, as Rosie mentioned earlier, that there was this other candidate, Eric Zemmour, who appeared further to the right than Marine Le Pen. He was campaigning with outright racist, anti-immigrant, misogynistic slogans, actually, in this campaign. And that has had Marine Le Pen appear soft on the one hand. And she actually, when you look at the programs of Marine Le Pen and Eric Zemmour's, the programs, the platforms are not that different, actually. Marine Le Pen is also campaigning on a profoundly anti-immigrant manifesto. That is one thing. But on the other hand, because there was this really far-right candidate, it became almost normal to hear all these very radical ideas day to day in the media everywhere, and people became used to it. And that's also one of the factors that has contributed to the fact that Marine Le Pen is now rising, has been rising in the polls, and she will certainly try to rise further, even if she lost this election.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for bringing us all your valuable insights coming out of Paris for these French elections.
Thank you.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.